All right, guys, are you ready for Color Pop 2? So let's take another entire set of colors. But first, before we start, let's go ahead and set the groundwork here. You know, I like to make this kind of reference for the whole series. This not only functions as a reference for this class, but I do this for a lot of my projects. It's important for me to know what colors I'm using and how I'm getting there and why I'm loving them. And this is, I guess I call it the Virgo in me that likes to have this organizational system so that I have a good reference. It's how I learn. I'm very kinesthetic, meaning I can not learn as well by listening or even watching, but once I put my hands to it, I learn it really well. So this is part of my kind of learning process and putting this together, but I also think it's really important for everybody learning color to create these grids, to just create their kind of reference for the colors that they're working with so that they can go back and kind of double check at any time and feel that confidence in their color discovery. Depending on your type A perfectionism, you might go ahead and measure, but I didn't. This is just a ruler that was 1 inch wide, just made some boxes until I ran out of space. So, think accordingly how you like to set up your journal and how you want to keep record of it, and that will be a lot easier moving forward. All right, so I'm setting up my palette. I'm just putting the colors that I've decided for this class. I've got cadmium yellow. I've got yellow ochre. You saw me just put down quinacridone nickel azo gold. I'm putting down some quinacridone magenta, putting the phthalo green yellow shade. I know it's like mouthfuls here, sorry. Teal, you can use cobalt teal. Teal is a little bit more opaque than cobalt teal. Cobalt teal is a much nicer transparent color, but totally up to you what you want to work with. Phthalo blue green shade. Again, trying to get all those words out of my mouth. And then I'm going to put some white down there. Now I'm using white, however, I will end up using some super heavy gesso. It's just my favorite way to thicken the paint. So just know that later on, this white is going to be replaced with that. But for just filling in my grid, getting comfortable with the colors, I'm going to just use some titanium white. You see me putting a glove on. This is a really weird reason why I'm doing it. I end up holding a baby wipe in my left hand, and by the time I'm done making this grid, I have like wrinkled fingers, like I've been sitting in the tub too long. So I'm putting this rubber glove on so I don't end up with wrinkled fingers. All right, so I'm going to make this grid. It's going to be kind of like an X and Y axis. And even though I don't do math, that's what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to put the same colors across the top, same colors left, and then like you can almost follow with your fingers like this plus this equals this. Now there's going to be parts of this grid I am not going to complete because there is no reason for me to have to do an experiment to find out what cadmium yellow and cadmium yellow makes. So I'm not going to fill out that box. Same thing with yellow ochre and yellow ochre, that kind of stuff. So I do this because it just maybe makes sense. And sometimes I've even skipped colors if I didn't even care what they mixed with. But for our practical purposes here, we're going to put the colors across the top and across the left. And you can see me with that baby wipe in my hand, just kind of cleaning it off. I know that I'm going to get some contamination at some point. I try not to put my brush in the brush bucket very often because my brush gets kind of soggy and I don't like how wet it is, and it kind of impedes what I'm doing if it's so wet and soppy. And so I try to just use the baby wipe, and then you'll see me every once in a while switch out for a paper towel and stuff like that. But whatever works for you. And then I'm just taking a regular pen and just writing in the names of the paints so that, again, I have this reference point. I never have to think, what was that? What color did it make? I can just go back to the chart. If I'm working on a series of work and I'm like, I just wish I had one more color, or if I like, I don't really like this now that I'm working with it, go back to this. I don't need any more paints. I can just figure out what it is that would work best for me. So this is like a checks and balances type thing to keep your thoughts and your color palette straight. It's also something you'll find that as you start working with colors, you'll start to develop your own like colors that are you. these mixes that become you. And then you might even want to keep them mixed and put them in a little jar. And, instead of pulling from tubes for your next project, pull from these pre-mixed sets of colors. I've been known to do that several times. Keep them in an airtight container, and then you have them for later. And you're always ready to kind of be popping that color at any given time without having to do all the mixing. All right, so you see me, I'm going through. I did cadmium yellow, yellow ochre. Now I'm mixing cadmium yellow with quinacridone nickel azo gold, which is a fan favorite. Those of you that like warm colors, this seems to be one that is in everybody's repertoire. All right, so I've got cadmium yellow, quinacridone magenta. I feel like that's a lovely color too. And I always put that tint next to it because I really want to know what it looks like when I say the word extending it out. I just mean like, how far can I take this color? If I add white to it, just kind of wanted an idea of what it looks like when it's a tint. And that just helps give me a little bit more information as I'm looking at this at a glance chart. This is phthalo green yellow shade and cadmium yellow. I say that like I have to get all the words right. I'm notorious for mixing up the names of those paints. So, all right, this is Diary Live. I'm sorry. Oh, see, that's what I'm talking about. Cadmium yellow and teal. Cadmium yellow and phthalo blue green shade. So a couple ways to interpret this. I can see out of all the colors I have, if I'm looking across the top, I'm listing out all the colors, and I can say, what do all those colors across the top look like when I mix cadmium yellow with them? And that's your simple at a glance. You can choose to create your grid, your color palette here, any way that makes sense to you. But for me, this is just the easiest way to make sense. Like I said, I did not need to have what color will cadmium yellow and yellow ochre be because I already have that on my grid. I don't need to know what yellow ochre and yellow ochre look like because it looks like yellow ochre. So I'm skipping. What does yellow ochre and quinacridone nickel azo gold, quinacridone magenta, and just kind of going like that. There's literally going to be like a diagonal that goes down this grid as I'm working through it. If you feel like you want all the colors on there, perfect. The reason why I don't do it, it's information overload. I don't want any extra or duplicate information on there. I feel like it's, immediate gratification. What do I need to know and what's the least amount of information I need to understand it? And that's why I do it like this. But certainly if you feel better filling in on the whole grid and those empty boxes are bothering you, then go ahead. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And again, as I'm mixing each color across, you're going to see how that second line of yellow ochre tells me what do all these colors look like when they're mixed with yellow ochre. And this would be an example if you felt it was incomplete and you were like, I really want to know, what does yellow ochre and cadmium yellow look like so I can look horizontal all the way across that line and know, then absolutely go ahead. And so you can see again, I skipped and I went nickel azo gold to quinacridone magenta because I already knew what nickel azo gold and cadmium yellow look like, or yellow ochre. So I've got the nickel azo with magenta, the nickel azo with the phthalo green. I'll do the nickel azo with teal. What I think is interesting is orange and blue should make brown. And you can depend on which way you put it. You can put more blue, more orange, but it doesn't make brown. It made green. And that's kind of the shift. Teal isn't really blue. Nickel azo orange isn't purely orange. It's more yellow, and that's why it makes it green. So this, even in Discovery, is exciting because we go by these like generalized statements like yellow and blue that makes green. Well, so does orange and blue. All right, and then that was the quinacridone nickel azo gold with the phthalo blue. All right, so now I'm going to Quin Magenta. Making a hot mess there. Cleaning it up. This is just a glass palette with my razor. I feel like this is just the most effective use of space for me too, and doesn't waste all those palette papers. So I'm doing Quin Magenta and Phthalo Green. And you would think green and magenta. You would not think. Do they make gray? Blue-gray? Apparently they do. You'd think that reddish and green would make brown, but they make gray. That's exciting. All right, so this is a really beautiful color. This is magenta and teal. Yay. And I don't even like purple, but it does make a nice purple, I think. All right, this is magenta and the phthalo blue. And I want to say one more time, you know, depending on how much, like if I use just a touch of blue and a whole heaping gob of magenta, I'm just going to have a magenta that has a little blue tint. So know that it's into the proportions too. All right, so phthalo green and teal, beautiful. And don't you really look at this? Look at teal and look at the color. If you like turquoise, this color is so much prettier than just teal. So this is phthalo green and phthalo blue. Look at this. This is like a color to rival phthalo turquoise, if that's in your mix. All right. Teal and phthalo blue. And then adding in a little bit of white. And I don't really need to do phthalo blue when phthalo blue makes phthalo blue. So I'm picking the colors now. What colors really appeal to me? There was no doubt in my mind that that was one of the colors that was going to make the cut. This is the decision process. See me like weighing it in. Which one do I want? So I do the cadmium yellow and quinacridone nickel azo gold. So I've got teal and orange. Again, now you don't have to choose these colors. This is not something that's like you're going to fail the class if you don't choose these colors. These are just suggestions. These are just what's making me feel excited as I'm looking at them. And I'm kind of deciding between the two of those. They both make me feel good. And then I'm going to need a green. Which green do I want to go with? The big decision. You'd think I was solving like world peace here by picking colors. So after I pick my colors, I really have gotten into the habit of just taking a little post-it note, slapping it on there, and writing what colors am I using for this. It's a really good reference because I can look at the artwork and know immediately what were the colors that I used. It's kind of a refresher, and then I also just have this backup note just to kind of look at what, if I go to use this palette again, or if it's a different day or whatever, I can just grab the paints I need that make the color palette I'm working with. So that's just what I do. I just write down the colors I need to make the colors that I put squares around as this quick reminder and stick it right to the page.